You're listening to The Business Plan with Ryan Carpenter podcast. Like us on Facebook at Business Plan Radio and follow us on Twitter at BizPlan Radio. That's B-I-Z Plan Radio. You can view our latest content on our Business Plan Radio YouTube channel. The Business Plan with Ryan Carpenter airs Monday nights at 7 on your community station, 89.7 in mid-Michigan, or online at lccradio.org.
I started the business plan with a few goals in mind. I'm sure you're tired of hearing me explain that this is a forum for discussion, but it is my absolute goal to have a 1 hour a week location where business people can step outside of their day-to-day operations and hear the stories of the people in the trenches like themselves, where they can learn from others' mistakes, get motivation from their rag-to-riches American dream stories, get feedback from other business professionals in the area, shine light on, or maybe even introduce some resources that are available to business professionals and entrepreneurs, and to hopefully have a positive impact on people who are in the exact same boat that I am as a business owner. I'm not a savior by any means. My goals were not all for the greater good. I did have some selfish goals for starting this show as well. I wanted to give myself an opportunity to bring in guests that will help me as a business owner, either by seeking out answers to questions that I have, or by informing me of resources that I'm not familiar with, or maybe don't really understand how that resource exactly could benefit me. Now, let's be honest. There are a lot of organizations and companies that are out there solely to help businesses grow. There are a lot that do it, but maybe not all of them are nonprofits or federally funded. Some do cost money and may be cost prohibitive to you. I myself wanted clarity on these issues so that I could better identify the resources that would help me the most. I also wanted to somewhat validate the hard work and experience that I have been through. By putting myself as the host of this show, I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone and saying, hey, I'm an expert. Now, obviously, I don't know everything. But when I started my business, I was often shy-ish. Uncomfortable putting myself out there as an expert. I mean, after all, the business I had started was still really young and had not yet proven itself. Because of that, I did not value our services as they should have been, and was more willing to lower our prices to get an opportunity. I was fairly timid, and this show essentially is forcing me to step back and say, hey, even though the company that I own is fairly new, I myself have been through a lot, done some really, really cool things in my career, even though I just left my 20s last month. I'm an expert. I do not know every single little thing. I have experienced so much already, though, that I can speak to nearly everything. I'm getting excited about the possibilities this show has to offer, and the potential benefit to the business community could be exceptional. Only time will tell, but I will do my due diligence to put ourselves in the right place to accomplish this. However, it will really boil down to the engagement we create with our listenership. Again, as we go live and start incorporating the question and answer portion, I'm going to lean on you all as listeners to call in, ask me or our guest questions about whatever the topic that day is, or tell us decisions you are contemplating or faced with, and would maybe like our feedback on. See, my radio idol is a personality named Dave Ramsey. If any of you have heard Dave's show, I essentially want to create that type of a community and program. He is a business owner who, as many business owners do, had to file bankruptcy. His banks that he had done his funding through ended up getting purchased by another company. And when that new company stepped in, they forced him to pay his debts. So they called his notes. And he had over $1 million that he had to come up with in a short period of time. And so he had to file bankruptcy. After going through that process, he made it his mission to become the get-out-of-debt guru. I want to do that for entrepreneurship. I've not filed bankruptcy. I've gone through the ups and downs, but I know what it's like to struggle to make it. And I know what it's like to have a passion that doesn't allow you to give up when the times get rough. Hopefully this can become the Dave Ramsey show of business, but I will be relying on you, my listeners, and the conversations between us all. Again, I want to create a platform for a dialogue, and a conversation cannot be had if I'm the only one talking. Today, I want to focus on one of two things that you are not supposed to talk about in business, right? Politics and religion. Well, I'm never going to touch on religion, but politics, although just as volatile as a topic, is something that has a huge impact on business. Politics can sometimes be straightforward in how an issue can affect business. Obviously, increasing regulation will increase cost and potentially cause headaches. But issues like roads and education have more of a long tail impact on business that may not be initially noticed. Businesses use roads to transport their product to stores. They use them for sales calls, for employees coming into work. Bad roads increase gas costs, increase upkeep costs on vehicles, and cause delays. Potholes and deteriorating roads, while maybe not the number one factor in deciding where to locate, does have an impact on where businesses decide to get set up. This makes it harder to attract new business and makes doing business in Michigan slightly more difficult. So even though you hear issues about roads and think mostly of how it affects your personal life, it does also have a huge impact on business. We're obviously in a very vicarious position right now when it comes to roads. It is a hot button issue that everyone wants, but no one wants to pay for. Determining the best direction to go in or what option is right from a funding and implementation standpoint is something that business owners need to pay attention to. Today's show is not about roads, but about the impact of politics and business. I'm not trying to push a road issue, but would like to simply show an example of how much political policy can really affect business, even if it's not at first completely obvious. Some issues are more obvious, though. A couple years ago, the state of Michigan, which was been built on unions, went to a right-to-work state. There are positives and negatives to absolutely everything in life, and this is no different. Unions did a great job giving a voice to the workers of this country, and we would not have a middle class were it not for these groups getting together to establish a larger collective voice. It has not been all positive, though, as they eventually increase costs and prices and prices of goods. They made it more difficult to operate both from a cost prohibitive standpoint as well as from a jumping through hoops standpoint. For every purpose of transparency, I want to let you know that I myself am I believe in the foundation and the idea behind unions. I think they were established for an extremely noble purpose, and the ability for people to get together for a louder voice and ability to impact issues greater than their individual power, in a nutshell, is really what America was founded on. We as colonists created what we refer to as the Union. They were being oppressed by a larger, more powerful entity, and by joining forces together, the United States was able to be born. So how do we figure out the best way to move forward, keeping as many of the positives as we can while eliminating as many of the negatives? Well, we have to have educated discussions. We present alternatives, but none of this can be done without paying attention. We cannot have a discussion on topics that we don't have a knowledge of. Politics and business is a slippery slope, one that must be navigated in a smart way. We are seeing the negative aspects of business and politics right now with presidential campaigns, and it rears its ugly head every election cycle, but nothing ever gets done about it. Businesses have far greater resources than individuals, and by resources, I mean money. This money is used to fund campaigns, lobby issues, and some argue is the reason the country is in the state it is. Again, politics are tough. You can never make everyone happy. But what is the best way forward? How do we protect business and the owners of that business that employ so many people in this country? How do we have this protection without overstepping our boundaries? Can we protect business without lobbyists completely taking over and running the government? I believe we can, but we have to work together to figure out what the best way to do so is. Each year, new regulations cause issues for business. Each year, new incentives and policies are being put in place to actually help business. With these things happening constantly, it is tough to really have a good grasp of what it is that's helping or hurting your business from a political standpoint. Phrasing of bills and piggybacking issues into other bills makes the environment very foggy to navigate. Even though it is way easier to throw your hands up and say, I don't have the slightest idea of what's going on, so I'm not going to pay attention. I have no impact on politics, so I'm just going to let it work itself out and I'll focus on my business. That would be a huge mistake. As business owners, we matter way too much to sit in the dark and let others steer the ship. That's why I wanted to bring in this week's guest. Usually when you hear the words Chamber of Commerce, you think of networking events and basically joining a business club. But the Michigan State Chamber of Commerce is a little different than what most of us think. I may be in the minority, but I figured it was just another networking club. Rich Studley, the president and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, will be with us after the break to talk about what the Michigan Chamber of Commerce is, how it differs from the local chambers, and what are some of the issues that are currently on the docket that have a potential to affect business. We will get his thoughts and positions on some of these topics, and we will explain how you can get involved and help steer the direction of policy in the state of Michigan in regards to business. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, I will have Rich with us discussing the Michigan Chamber of Commerce and the political environment affecting business. You're listening to The Business Plan with Ryan Carpenter on LCC's 89.7 FM, WLNZ Lansing. We'll be back shortly.
You're listening to The Business Plan with Ryan Carpenter podcast. Like us on Facebook at Business Plan Radio and follow us on Twitter at BizPlan Radio. That's B-I-Z Plan Radio. You can view our latest content on our Business Plan Radio YouTube channel. The Business Plan with Ryan Carpenter airs Monday nights at 7 on your community station, 89.7 in mid-Michigan, or online at lccradio.org.
All right, welcome back to the second segment, the time in which finally get off the mic and let someone else talk for a second. Each week, we're going to have a guest on for segment 2 and 3 to talk about themselves, their company, give some guidance and motivation. If you have a suggestion for a business owner or someone who should be a part of this discussion, please email the show at businessplanradio@gmail.com. That's businessplanradio@gmail.com. We're looking for all business owners, business professionals, business professors, political figures, and organizations that affect business. Also, if you have any questions or topics that you would like for us to cover in a show, email those suggestions as well to businessplanradio@gmail.com, and we will try our best to incorporate. The political environment can be overwhelming at times. It is a struggle just to handle your day-to-day operations as a business. So dedicating the resources to stay educated and involved in the political landscape may be a little bit out of reach for some. Together, we have a larger voice, more power, and a support system to facilitate growth. That is why I brought in Rich Studley, President and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, to discuss these topics and shine some light for us. Rich, thank you for coming in today and giving us some of your time. Why don't we start first by telling our listeners what exactly the Michigan Chamber of Commerce is, how it started, and where we are today.
Ryan, thanks for the opportunity to visit with you today. I appreciate it. I'm the president and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. The Michigan Chamber is a statewide business organization. We're one of the largest state chambers in the country. We represent about 6,800 of Michigan's job providers. The Michigan Chamber is truly a statewide organization. As CEO of the state chamber, I'm reminded every day that we're a very large and diverse state. And so we represent job providers in all 83 of Michigan's counties. We have members of literally every size and type, from small business to medium-sized companies to major corporations, mining, manufacturing, forest products, retail, wholesale, the construction industry. The Michigan Chamber's general membership is really a very good cross-section of Michigan's business community. Within our business community, you've got tremendous strength and diversity, not just here in the Lansing area, but across the state. And it's been a real joy for me to work at the Michigan Chamber for 34 years now. I started out as an entry-level lobbyist. I'm into my 8th year now as president and CEO. And I work for an organization that is committed to being member-driven and policy-focused. At the Michigan Chamber, our core competency is business advocacy. The mission of the Michigan Chamber is to promote conditions favorable to job creation and business growth. It's our job, frankly, to fight for the home team.
Right.
Today in Washington, D.C., if you follow the federal government and listen to members of Congress, you can see and hear pretty quickly that free enterprise is either underappreciated or under attack. Part of the good news about our state is that leadership matters. The Michigan Chamber is a leadership organization. Often in government, the most important decision is who decides, and that's true whether you're thinking about your local community and the school board or city council. It's equally true about the Michigan legislature. So part of our focus is to work with candidates who are thinking about running for state office and to encourage them to consider supporting business-friendly policies. We're very actively involved in the legislative process. We're located about 3 blocks from the state capitol. We have 5 full-time lobbyists, and our sole focus is working to promote conditions favorable to job creation and business growth in Michigan. That makes us a little different than your local Chamber of Commerce. I've had the opportunity over the past 30 years to travel the country. I have visited hundreds and hundreds of local chambers. I've talked with hundreds and hundreds of state and local chamber executives around the country. A common saying in my business is, if you've seen one chamber, you've seen one chamber. Every community is different. Chambers of commerce are all about bringing employers, bringing entrepreneurs together. We're at our best, really, when you have companies of different sizes and types that work together to identify a common problem and a common solution. Here in Michigan, there are about 300 local chambers. Many of those are part-time or seasonal organizations. They might be focused around a central business district or a community event, but there are many outstanding chambers of commerce. There are well over 100 chambers of commerce in Michigan that are full-time year-round organizations with paid staff, active volunteers. Your local chamber is typically involved in neighborhood or community issues. They might be focused on a community event. They might be focused on networking. They might be focused on providing information about the community. It's our job at the Michigan Chamber to make our state more attractive for job creation, job retention. It's up to the Grand Rapids Chamber in West Michigan or the Detroit Regional Chamber in Southeast Michigan to say to employers, you should locate here in Detroit or you should locate here in Grand Rapids. So we're part of the Chamber Federation. At the national level, the Chamber Federation is led by Tom Donahue, the president and CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I'm privileged to serve on the board of directors of the U.S. Chamber, but they are a separate and independent organization. It's a voluntary membership. We don't tell the U.S. Chamber what to do. They don't tell us what to do. And that same relationship exists here in Michigan, where most local chambers are voluntary members of the Michigan Chamber, but we have a separate and independent board of directors. We don't tell them what to do. They don't tell us what to do. So it's all about teamwork and cooperation and working together, really, to encourage job creation and business growth.
A very noble cause. It's a very noble cause. Interesting thing that you said is that if you listen to to Washington, it seems like we're under attack. And I actually touched on that a couple weeks ago in one of our episodes. part of the reason why I wanted to start this show, I was talking with you a little bit before we started this program. But one of the reasons I wanted to start it is because I wanted to create a place where business owners can come in and tell their story, so people can understand that these are normal people. Not everyone that owns a business was born with a silver spoon. I feel like people who own businesses are kind of perceived in a very inaccurate way, and so I want this to be a forum in which people can come in and tell their story, and people can understand that these are people that need to be championed. They're people who need to be looked up to, just as if they were a basketball player playing in the NBA, right? They have this, a lot of times they have the same struggle story to get to where they're at. And, I think they just kind of fall by the wayside, even though they have a bigger impact technically in the way that the whole country and state work than any of those athletes do. So it's funny that you say that, because I definitely feel that same way. And being a small business owner, I'm kind of the one that has to deal with a lot of that fallout, especially when it comes to regulations and taxes and things along those lines. So let's see. So how do you guys pick which topics to focus on? I know that there's obviously a lot of issues out there that you guys could be spending your time on, but how do you pick which time to allocate your actual resources to?
For the Michigan Chamber, the answer to that question is simple. We listen to our members. Since 1959, we've been on the job here in Lansing. We're located just a couple of blocks from the state capitol. We have some of the best lobbyists in the country who are strong advocates for Michigan's job providers. Every day when the legislature's in session, we have lobbyists in the Capitol building explaining the impact of proposed rules or regulations or legislation to lawmakers. Sometimes our job is really more like being a translator. I think
Right.
sometimes people in government with the best of intentions have good ideas, but they may not understand the reality of their proposal as it would impact on a new startup company as opposed to a major corporation. Ryan, I share your concern that today in Michigan and across our country, there are a lot of young people who grow up and are not well educated or well informed about free enterprise. And so at the national level, we're early in the next campaign for president, but you have someone who's running for president who proudly proclaims himself to be a socialist.
Right.
And we want to have a wide range of views in Congress and in the legislature, but I think there are a lot of people, if you stopped them on the street and said, what's the definition of capitalism and what's the definition of socialism, they might be hard-pressed to give you a clear distinction. Part of the challenge for young people is that unless your mom and dad own and operate a family business, you can graduate from high school and maybe graduate from college and have never worked in a business or been on the other side of the counter to know what it takes to make sure that the soup is hot, that the sandwich tastes good, that the copies are clear and printed on time and delivered. And so I've had the privilege to work in family-owned and operated businesses, and I see what small business owners go through every day. We're concerned that in 2016, there are individuals and groups who have already laid out a campaign theme misrepresenting the business community, suggesting that every person who owns and operates a business is a greedy multimillionaire.
Right.
And so
I wish I was.
there was a book written a couple of years ago by the chairman of the Gallup organization. They do national and now international polling. And the title of that book is The Jobs War. And the writer speaks eloquently to how in many parts of our country, whether we're talking about challenged urban areas or depressed rural areas, the single most helpful thing that could happen to those families in those communities is if more people had good jobs, more people had the opportunity to support themselves, to achieve their goals, to be able to care for their families. And so part of the message in the book is that around the world, you can see communities and countries in great social distress or unrest, and often a common factor there is a high level of unemployment or chronic unemployment, where people don't see a positive vision of the future and don't have the feeling that they can make an impact as an individual. And that's still one of the great things about Michigan and about America. We're the Great Lakes state. We have 10 million people. We have a large and diverse state. And so if we can promote conditions favorable to job creation and economic growth, whether you're a student at LCC or MSU, whether you're a small business owner with that next big idea, if we can level the playing field, get government focused on providing basic public services, that's essential, but creating a level playing field where people with a better idea who want to work harder and work smarter have the opportunities to succeed, we'll all be better off. When I started at the Michigan Chamber in the early 80s, we had one of the worst business climates in the country. Our unemployment and worker compensation systems were a train wreck for injured or unemployed workers and for employers too. We were losing jobs to other states and foreign countries. And so when I look back at those early days and I think about how I used to go out and give legislative updates, sometimes in the middle of the legislative update I would think to myself, oh my goodness, this is depressing. Why would anyone want to start a business? Or how do you grow a business in Michigan? But what we have demonstrated over the years is that good public policy matters, and that with strong leadership, we can get Michigan working again. Michigan is turning around. Unemployment is going down. Employment is going up. Our state's gross domestic product is increasing. And so the business people that I represent have a positive vision for Michigan's future. I suppose you could say we're a conservative organization, not Democrat versus Republican. Within our membership, we have Democrats and Republicans and independents. But at the Michigan Chamber, we believe in the power of free enterprise. We believe in private property rights. We believe in personal responsibility. We believe in limited government. We're not anti-government. It is absolutely essential at the state level and the local level. There are essential public services that government needs to provide, whether it's public education or police, fire, public works. And so at the Michigan Chamber, we work hard to elect business-friendly candidates who want to be pragmatic problem solvers. We're not interested in helping send any more people to Washington, D.C. who are anti-government and want to shut down the federal government. I believe that you can be, whether you're a liberal or conservative, a principled person, you can represent your district, but we need a wide range of individuals from different walks of life in the legislature. Ryan, you know as an entrepreneur that if you talk to an elected official about any business climate issue, you can tell in about, 2 minutes whether they have signed the front and the back of a check. Or if all they know about an economic issue is what they've read in a briefing paper prepared by a staff member. So I'm blessed at the Michigan Chamber with an extraordinary board of directors. We are driven by 80 to 84 business leaders from across the state that meet 3 times a year to set the strategic direction for the Michigan Chamber, to establish our legislative priorities at the beginning of each session. We communicate the Michigan Chamber's legislative priorities to every member of the State House and the Michigan Senate. The way our voting record works, as a practical matter, is everybody starts with 100%, and their score only goes down as they choose not to support Michigan's job providers. So we try to work with lawmakers. I've learned over the years that not every Republican is pro-business, and certainly not every Democrat is anti-business. There are good people from both sides of the aisle in the State House and the Michigan Senate. So we need to educate and inform and translate the practical problems that business people face into constructive solutions in the legislative and the political process.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's kind of what this show is about, is to create that platform where people can have those discussions and educate themselves, and also be engaged in the community. Because I think that you can't really get that feedback from your constituents if people don't know what it is you're talking about, right? So you have to somewhat be informed. You have to pay attention. And all of these issues affect business. Now, you had mentioned earlier the people that are leaving the state back when you had first started back in the 80s with the chamber, and obviously we've gone through a pretty big spell of that recently. It seems like things are starting to turn around and people are starting to stay here. I think people see the opportunities in a state like this, where, let's say for instance Detroit. Everyone always talks about Detroit when they talk about business, but to have an opportunity to come in and leave a mark on a city. You can't really do that in a New York or a Los Angeles very easily, because there's no little niche that you can fill, but in Detroit, obviously you can do that. And so how do we as business owners really get engaged to a point to where we can start to make sure that these policies really start going in our favor?
One of the things that I learned early as a legislative staffer and then a lobbyist is, especially in any state capital, information is knowledge and knowledge is power. Right. Listening to programs like this, talking with employees and employers about the challenges they face and the opportunities that they're focused on. If you visit our website at michamber.com, you'll see that we have a lot of information there about the practical challenges facing employers. As a membership organization, we provide a wide range of member benefits and products and services, but as I mentioned earlier, our core competency is business advocacy. So we are all about educating and informing the news media and the general public and lawmakers in the House and the Senate, administration officials, about the changes we could make that would have a positive impact on job creation and economic growth. Often at the local level, there's a concern about the adequacy of police protection or fire protection. I'm a product of our public school system here in Michigan. I grew up in Kalamazoo and Portage. All of my children and grandchildren attend public schools. And often our message when there's a concern expressed about school funding is that the very best guarantee we can have that there will be enough revenue to adequately fund state government and local government and police and fire and public works is a strong and growing economy. In the last decade, we lost almost 1 million Michigan residents. For many years now, one of the most fundamental problems we face when it comes to adequately funding government is we don't have enough taxpayers. Right. And we want taxpayers to be successful, whether they're individual or business taxpayers. So at the Michigan Chamber, we believe that you can't sink half a boat. We need a business climate that is good for employees and employers, where we can all work together with freedom and opportunity and respect to grow and develop and prosper. Even though we lost almost 1 million Michigan residents, we're still one of the 10 largest states in the country.
Yeah.
When I travel now to Washington, D.C., I often talk about Michigan as the Great Lakes states. Some of those states that took jobs from us a few years ago are wonderful places to live and work, but they're running out of water. Oh, yeah. They don't have clean, fresh water. Part of our message of hope and opportunity is to remind those that left that we're still here. And we're in the center of North America. We're smack dab in the middle of one of the world's largest supplies of fresh water. Right. Next to California, Michigan is the second most agriculturally diverse state in the country. We have a thriving forest products industry. We have returning to greatness a mining industry in the Upper Peninsula. 2 of the newest nickel mines in North America opened recently in our Upper Peninsula, providing great jobs for Upers, but also essential materials. If we're going to return to greatness, U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow often says, and I agree, we have to be a state where we grow things and where we make things. That's about agribusiness. It's about mining and manufacturing and that synergy with all of our leading industries. So one of the nicest things that's happened over the past few years at the Michigan Chamber, we represent a lot of family-owned and operated businesses, many of them second, third, even fourth generation companies. And it was really heartbreaking to see a few years ago people looking at their sons and daughters leaving the community, leaving the state for job opportunities. Now, some of the children of board members I worked for originally are running those family-owned and operated companies, have come back to start their families or never left and saw it through the downturn and are now creating job opportunities for families and friends and neighbors. I think we have to help voters understand that most of the jobs that will be created in our state are going to be created by existing businesses. And so we've got to have an environment where current businesses can grow and be successful. Everyone needs to pay their fair share of taxes, but overtaxation can be a serious problem. We need to have adequate regulations to protect public health and safety, but unnecessary overregulation is a drag on job creation and economic growth. So that's why we try to be a source of information for employees and employers, for entrepreneurs. At the Michigan Chamber, we also have a nonprofit educational program, one of the most exciting programs we've been involved in for years now. We're just really launching through the Michigan Chamber Foundation. It's called the YAY program, the Young Entrepreneurs Academy, where we're inviting public school and parochial school and charter school teachers across the Lansing area to identify young students who have an idea to start a business. And the other day when I was leaving the office, I saw a parent walking in with his son who was just coming from soccer practice. And both of them were really excited about the opportunity to learn more about what it takes to start a business, how to have a business plan, how to raise financing, how to think about product development. And we've seen this program in other states create great opportunities for young entrepreneurs. At one of the last meetings of the U.S. Chamber Board of Directors, I met a young woman who lives in Florida who is a lacrosse player. And as a young woman, she thought the lacrosse uniforms were ugly and the equipment didn't last very long. She's on her way now to having a multi-million-dollar a year company.
Really?
And she struck me as the kind of person we'll read about in the future and we'll all end up working for.
Well, good. I played lacrosse in high school, so that's always great to hear. Are you familiar with it? You know, if she got teamed up with Warrior down in Detroit?
She started her own company. She and her family live in Florida.
Okay.
And she started designing a line of clothing for women athletes in that sport. And then she's a very good and aggressive player, and a lot of the equipment broke. And as she and her father looked at it, they started thinking, well, if we change the design, we could make this better so it would last longer. And she was a national finalist in the Young Entrepreneurs Academy competition. She got a $10,000 grant for the next round of product development and marketing to take her company over the $1 million a year threshold. That can happen in Lansing. That can happen across our state. We're turning things around in Detroit, and Michigan's future is great.
Do you guys consider 30 to be within that youth range? Because I just got there last month, so I'm still kind of wrapping my head around that. We're going to go to a quick break, and when we come back, I'll have Rich with us still discussing the Michigan Chamber and some of the political environment affecting business. You're listening to The Business Plan with Ryan Carpenter on LCC's 89.7 WLNZ Lansing. We'll be back shortly.
You're listening to The Business Plan with Ryan Carpenter podcast. Like us on Facebook at Business Plan Radio and follow us on Twitter at BizPlan Radio. That's B-I-Z Plan Radio. You can view our latest content on our Business Plan Radio YouTube channel. The Business Plan with Ryan Carpenter airs Monday nights at 7 on your community station, 89.7 in mid-Michigan, or online at lccradio.org.
All right. Welcome back. We are in the third segment of The Business Plan with Ryan Carpenter. My guest today is Rich Studley, President and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. Rich, we were talking a little bit in the last segment about some of the political issues and things, but we never really actually got into the political issues. So why don't you inform my listeners as to some of the issues that are out there right now that are affecting business, how it's affecting business, and also maybe what the Michigan Chamber is doing to steer that in the right direction.
We're member-driven, we're policy-focused, we listen to our members, we establish new legislative priorities at the beginning of each session. For several years now, one of our top legislative priorities has been to work with Democrats and Republicans and business and labor to fix the roads. Michigan is the home of America's auto industry. We're the state that put America on wheels. sadly now, study after study has shown we're underfunding our roads. We're an older industrial state. Many roads that were built to last 30, 40, 50 years, and bridges the same, have now been in service 40, 50, 60 years. And the wear and tear because of our seasons are pretty tough. And so one of our top priorities this fall is to finish what the legislature started on fixing the roads. Now in November, on this Thursday, it will be 6 months since voters across the state said no to Proposal 1, the ballot proposal that would have increased the sales tax and other taxes to fix the roads. There are a lot of reasons why Proposal 1 didn't pass, but many motorists and voters voted no because we have a full-time legislature, and they wanted the legislature to fix the roads now through the legislative process. So I think we're very close to a breakthrough at the Michigan Chamber. We support a user fee-based system. We think that the people and businesses that use the road should pay the roads. We support cost-saving reform measures. We support reprioritizing current spending. And we believe after years of study, we need some additional new revenue. So at a minimum, we hope the legislature will soon approve a $1.2 billion comprehensive package to increase efficiency and effectiveness on the part of state and local road agencies, to reprioritize some current spending. We think it's possible to reprioritize about $600 million a year in current spending. The total state budget is now well over $50 billion. That's a lot of money, and the budget process needs to be about setting priorities. And we think we need about $600 million a year in new revenue. We think the best way to go about that would be gradually over the next few years to increase motor fuel taxes on gasoline and diesel so that both commercial vehicles and passenger vehicles pay more. A moderate increase in motor vehicle registration fees would also be appropriate. It's one of those issues that we talked about earlier where it's really leadership. At this point, it is less a question of the details and specifics, although those are important. It's more a question of leadership. We need the governor to close the deal. We need the speaker and the Senate Majority Leader and other legislative leaders to work together. Our message to lawmakers has been for several weeks now, stop the ping pong match. It's not enough to keep batting proposals back and forth. Take action, solve the problem, and do it now. All three of Michigan's leading industries are heavily dependent on the roads. It makes no sense to spend $35 million a year running fabulous Pure Michigan campaigns all across the country and then have people visit our state, land at world-class airports in Detroit and Grand Rapids, and then have a miserable experience because they're put on second or third-rate roads. So travel and tourism is a leading industry. Good roads, good transportation are critically important. We focus at the Michigan Chamber on public transit as well as our ports and airports, but so much of the debate is about the roads because that's where the problem is. Another leading industry in our state is agribusiness. If you're a farmer in a rural area and you can't get livestock to market, or you don't have an efficient way to get products to market, that's a problem. There are rural parts of our state where heavy farm equipment has to go miles and miles out of their way because bridges are either closed entirely or have severe weight limits. Those severe weight limits can also be a real problem for emergency vehicles. Right. Ambulances and police cars and fire trucks are heavy, and they need to get where they need to go quickly. Michigan's manufacturers are also another leading industry. I can look out the window at our headquarters in downtown Lansing across the street and see one of the newest auto plants in the country. And the GM workers there do a fantastic job making world-class vehicles. But the inventory that used to sit in a warehouse is now on the back of a truck with a just-in-time delivery system scheduled at 15-minute intervals. Right. If those trucks can't deposit their parts on time, you can shut down that plant in just a couple of hours. And so all three of our leading industries benefit from that. We're hopeful that there will soon be a breakthrough so that we can move on to other important issues. Energy policy is another critically important issue for employees and employers. Right. As homeowners, we all need safe, reliable, and affordable energy. We're working to defeat a proposal that would ban fracking and shut down Michigan's oil and gas industry, which employs 30,000 Michigan residents. A quarter to a third of the natural gas that we use to heat our homes comes from right here in Michigan. 80% of our homes are heated with safe, reliable, and affordable natural gas. We also need to look at energy policy as it relates to electricity. In the next few years, because of age and federal regulation, we'll be shutting down many baseload generating plants. We need renewable and alternative energy, but we also have to have safe, reliable, affordable electric energy. So we want to finish the debate over fixing the roads so that we can move on to energy policy and some other issues before the end of the year. It's still a non-election year, and that's the best opportunity we have, and especially with term limits, to get lawmakers to focus on good public policy.
Yeah, you wouldn't know that it's not the political season if you turned on the TV, but
well, that's the nature of the process. Somebody's always running for something.
yeah.
But we want members of the House and Senate to work together to be pragmatic problem solvers. I think candidates for office are most likely to be successful when they have a positive vision for Michigan's future and they're clear about where they stand and they have a track record of accomplishment. So that's what we're focused on.
Cool. Yeah, it seems like, this is obviously one of those tough things because you can never make everyone happy. I mean, it's hard to make a couple people happy. So, I can't imagine, millions of people. And losing millions of people, I mean, you're talking about, about revenue and revenue generation being a huge portion of being able to get getting a lot of these different things that we want accomplished. There's a lot that needs to be done in this state. And it seems like we're still talking about a lot of the same issues for years and years. And so we obviously have to get rid of those issues so that we can move on to some other prevalent issues. So is it more of an issue on funding it, or is it more of an issue on just getting people to stop playing the game and just get the job done?
We're actually doing much better here in Lansing than in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
We do have a strong governor who likes to approach issues in a nonpartisan or bipartisan way. Governor Snyder's worked with the mayor of Detroit to lead the city through bankruptcy and turn around that community. Mayor Duggan spoke to our board of directors recently. He's doing an extraordinary job in Detroit. So it's more about leadership and less about who's a Democrat or a Republican. I do think one of the challenges we have with term limits is that lawmakers don't have very long to serve before people are asking them, are you going to run for Speaker or Senate Majority Leader?
Right.
If you're in the House, sometimes you don't even get seated and people are asking if you're going to run for the Senate or Congress. It used to be before term limits that lawmakers would have a couple of years to get to know the process and to know their colleagues. And sometimes, especially in a legislative body with 110 people, you can't read every bill. At some point, you have to be able to trust your colleagues or your seatmates. And so,
or have a good support staff.
It's hard to get to know people, and we can still make this system work. Michigan is a great state, and we are making progress. Recently, we became a right-to-work state. That was very important in terms of Michigan's economic competitiveness, especially after Indiana became a right-to-work state. And there are a lot of other opportunities as well. What's important is that our system of government is based on 3 separate and independent branches of government. It's very important that we have a strong executive office, an effective legislature, and a capable judiciary. Kind of like a 3-legged stool. If you've got 1 or 2 of those legs that are kind of wobbly or shorter than the others, that's a real challenge for us. So I think it's a good thing that the legislative process is deliberative, that you have people from all walks of life. We'll make better decisions when we have more diversity and more inclusion in the legislature. But in the end, we have a full-time legislature in Michigan. These people volunteered,
right,
and we pay them $75,000 a year to solve problems. They need to come to work and do the job.
Yeah, I mean, everyone else has to go to work, right? And they have to do their job in order to get their paycheck. So, but it's a tough environment. You have to appease a lot of people, and again, it's hard to make a lot of people happy. So I can understand how it would be difficult, but in order to really get things done, I mean, you have to stand out and say, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, this is what I'm going to go forward with, and and be that leader that stands up and does it. Otherwise, people are just going to kind of sit around and things are just going to keep getting batted around.
Lawmakers do need to make difficult decisions. I think we need to be respectful of people. A real test of friendship can be whether you can agree to disagree.
Oh, yeah.
And then move on to the next issue. And so it's also important, I think, to take calculated risks, to do pilot projects, to experiment with public policy. Not wild and crazy things, but
Right.
to look at other states. A couple of years ago, the previous administration said, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we had a homegrown film industry? Let's copy what was being done in some other states. Let's have tax credits or tax incentives to try and encourage a homegrown film industry. The challenge sometimes with experiments in government is there's nothing quite as permanent as a temporary government program.
Right.
And so the pilot project was started, and Michigan was in a foot race with other states that offered very generous tax incentives, credits. We went even so far as to give refundable tax credits to write checks to movie stars and Hollywood film producers who would visit our state. And that program was funded, and it's always fun and exciting to have a movie star in the community or a film crew present. But we started looking at that program in terms of the return on investment. If you look at the Pure Michigan program that promotes our state, for every dollar we spend, we get $5 or $6 back in travel and tourism. If you apply the same test to the Hollywood film subsidy, what we found is a very expensive program. And in 2013, the legislature asked the MEDC, last year you spent millions and millions of dollars. How many full-time jobs did you create? And they answered the question honestly, to their credit, and the answer to that question was 0. They had spent millions and millions of dollars that could have gone to community colleges or higher education or
The
police,
roads we
fire,
talked about?
public works, the roads. And so at the Michigan Chamber, we made the difficult decision to support legislation to eliminate the Hollywood film subsidy. Eventually, we were successful in doing that. As luck would have it, we now save about $50 million a year, which is almost the exact amount of revenue that would be generated by a 1 penny increase in motor fuel taxes on gas and diesel. So that revenue is now available to be reprioritized. And we're kind of old-fashioned at the Michigan Chamber. We still believe that $1 million is a lot of money. And so that's $50 million saved that can be put into a program where we know we will get a positive return on investment. Good jobs for the hardworking men and women in our construction industry, and a positive impact on agribusiness, travel and tourism, and manufacturing. Here in the Lansing area, all three of those industries are important. They're important across the state. So sometimes being a lawmaker does involve making tough decisions and setting priorities, but I think Michigan residents are pretty good about respecting people who are courteous and do their job, but make difficult decisions from time to time.
Yeah, there's definitely some positives to living in the Midwest and having that Midwest mindset. You brought up the film credit, and this is obviously something that it affects me as a media production person. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't affect me like what you would think it would, because again, most of that money was going towards super rich people that lived in California. So what do you think were some of the things that did work, and what do you think were some of the things that really prevented that, which was another one of those noble causes that just didn't work out? What do you think were some of the things that prohibited that from really reaching its potential?
I think the challenge with the Hollywood film subsidy as it was administered by the MEDC was the on-again, off-again nature, the fact that so much money was going to movie stars and film producers who were not committed to living and working in Michigan year-round, the transitory nature of the industry. It might have been better to focus more on helping entrepreneurs start small businesses to sustain them to be successful over time. It might have been better to spend that money more focused on apprenticeships and training programs that would have resulted in better more consistent job opportunities and careers in the film industry. I think part of the challenge was not directing more of the focus of that program to ongoing commercial activities, advertising and marketing, as opposed to, that giant blockbuster, once-in-a-decade film that might be filmed in Traverse City or Grand Rapids or Detroit. I think part of the challenge was with that program is that sometimes when films were produced here, the image they conveyed of either the city of Detroit or the state of Michigan was far from positive.
Right.
And so that worked against part of the message that we're turning things around.
Paying money for negative advertising, essentially.
If every film that's produced or every movie that was produced was, a crime story in devastated neighborhoods in Detroit, there are parts of Detroit that today are beautiful and turning around. And so I think it was a lot of those mixed messages and mixed opportunities. In the end, there was just a better way to spend $50 million a year, and lawmakers deserve credit for taking the courage to pull the plug. There's nothing wrong with a pilot project or experimenting, but you have to monitor it and then be disciplined.
Right. Yeah, because it seemed too like it was maybe bad timing, because we weren't really in the best place financially as a state and as a country. And so, again, you're talking about revenue and things like this, and we're basically handing some of that revenue back, at a time where we didn't really have the revenue to cover the things that we were already paying for. So, obviously timing is always a big thing. Do you think it's a pilot that maybe people will sit back and say, okay, the idea was there, maybe the implementation was wrong, maybe we'll give this a go again, but in a different way? Or do you think that film industry in Michigan is essentially done from a government being involved standpoint?
I think one of the very positive lessons we learned is that if we're going to focus on those kinds of economic development programs, we need to look at our population, we need to look at our natural resources, we need to look at the geography of the state and play to our strength. No matter how much money you spend, you aren't going to turn Lansing, Michigan into Hollywood, California. And we were in an almost unwinnable arms race with states like New York and Louisiana. So invest that same money at LCC or MSU or any one of our other great universities, you probably get a better return. Put it into fixing the roads, and you help entrepreneurs in agribusiness, travel and tourism, and manufacturing create jobs. So I think sometimes people get caught up in the glitz and the glamour of programs and projects like this, and you've got to step back and do that harder analysis. How much does this cost? And no matter how much fun it is, what's the return on investment, and are we meeting those original goals? That's why at the Michigan Chamber we believe we need more legislative oversight, not less. We need the legislature to return to a more active role monitoring budgets after they're approved. Do state departments carry out their goals and objectives? How can we encourage and support the extraordinary people who are state employees and want to do good things? And so there's a very important role for the legislature to play in our system of checks and balances to make sure that as taxpayers, Democrat, Republican, Independent, that we get a good return on investment.
Makes sense. We just all have to kind of have that conversation and figure out what the happy medium is. So, Rich, really appreciate you coming in today. Obviously, we're I've worked with the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. I've been a member of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, and so I appreciate everything that you guys do over there. And and again, I really appreciate you coming in and giving me a little bit of your time today.
Thank you, Ryan. Glad to be helpful.
No problem. I will keep you informed as to everything that's going on with our show, who our next guest is, when our first live show is going to be. I will keep you all posted on all of that information as we move forward. This has been The Business Plan with Ryan Carpenter on LCC's 89.7 FM WLNZ Lansing. I look forward to our next discussion. See you next week. Thanks for listening.
This has been The Business Plan with Ryan Carpenter Podcast. Like us on Facebook at Business Plan Radio and follow us on Twitter at BizPlan Radio. That's B-I-Z Plan Radio. You can view our latest content on our Business Plan Radio YouTube channel. The Business Plan with Ryan Carpenter airs Monday nights at 7 on your community station, 89.7 in mid-Michigan, or online at lccradio.org.